Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Author of Your Own Stories Daily Growth Hack Show. And I'm super excited to have a fellow podcaster and coach on today. We have Gina Johnson on today. So, Gina, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Doug. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So, we were talking offline, and you have, I think, a very inspirational and moving story about how you got to where you are today. And so, for those people that may not know you already or haven't been following you online, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So about 5 years ago, I was training for a marathon and working, mom of 3 kids. And I actually had done about a 15K run, some skipping the day before. And then I had a heart attack the night I was 34 years old at home with the kids. And I actually did nothing about it till the next day when I tried to go to work and lost my vision completely. So I went to the hospital, of course, thinking it was a migraine. And I was there for 5 days because I'd found out I not only had a heart attack, but have a heart condition that is a lifelong heart condition. So it was quite a surprise, Doug, as I'm sure you could imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and what a testament to moms, right? I'm a mom. I have a heart attack, so I took care of the family, went in later, take care of myself last, right? Wow. And such a obviously, I would assume a wake up call, right? Of kind of one of those things like, wow, life is short. Is that kind of what went
Oh,
through your head?
absolutely.
So
Very short.
yeah. Well, wow. I mean, you're young. You're still young, but especially back then, and you're going, okay, I got these 3 kids to take care of, and here I am. What kind of changes did that inspire within you?
That inspired a lot of changes, but believe it or not, there was a bit of regression before the change came because I ate so well and I exercised so much. I thought if I had a heart attack anyways, who cares? And I just started eating ice cream and I didn't watch so much what I ate anymore. But I did make a lot of changes mentally. And I left the hospital with the podcast that I interviewed you on in my head, determined that I was going to figure out how people got over these things and what they did.
Wow. And so obviously taking a life is short, approach to life, like not what I'll call not sweating the small stuff, right? It sounds like, and then um, tell me if I'm wrong, but you also came to a conclusion of like, hey, how do I raise this mental game, right? How do I
Yes,
become more mentally fit, for lack of better experience? Is that right?
absolutely.
Awesome. And so you had the idea, you're in the hospital and you say, hey, look, I'm going to formulate my own podcast, which, probably the last thing a lot of people are thinking about while lying in the hospital is let me start another venture, another routine. How did that come about? Like what inspired you to really go, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to interview people, which is a scary thing for a lot of people, right? You're putting yourself out there in the world in a new and different way. How did you overcome those hurdles?
Well, for any of your listeners that are sitting on the sideline and they're just thinking about jumping in, I was in that place and I had started a podcast 4 months before my heart attack. And I was going to interview entrepreneurs on how they stayed fit because I found a lot of entrepreneurs really lacked that piece of self-care. And that was the surprising part when I'd had the heart attack was I thought, how can I interview people about health when I have this heart condition and I couldn't even walk for more than 150 meters at that time? So I was feeling kind of sorry for myself and looking for 30-year-old people who had a heart attack. And there was nothing on Google. But I found James Altucher's blog about his horrible Black experience that he writes about. And he said what saved him was writing 10 ideas a day. So I was writing on all the hospital napkins and whatever I could find every day, 10 different ideas. And that was where the idea came, was to find people in their 30s that had these things happen like I had, and then figure out what they did. So it was very selfish. How could I get out of this?
No. Well, I always say some of the best things you can do for the world is being selfish, right? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, right, you can't take care of other people. You burn out. I think a lot of people miss that. They think the terminology of selfishness is used, in my opinion, is mistakenly used. And for someone like you, I mean, come on, you're a mom, which is I'm a father. And I can tell you right now, being a mom is the hardest job out there, because when I try to sub in, I get my butt kicked. So I mean, talk about the ultimate act of selfishness. For my wife, if she's not taking care of herself, she can't come back and take care of our family. And she's the bridge. So for yourself to say you're doing something that's very selfish to interview people, I'm going to call you out on that, only because you're helping people. And listen to all these listeners. You're paying it forward in so many amazing ways. And not only your podcast, but now you're here on the Author of Your Own Story show, where we have tens of thousands of people downloading and listening to you and sharing your wisdom. So you're doing a lot there.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So you're doing the podcast, and now you're developing, you've got a coaching business, you're doing workshops. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about that and how that came about.
Certainly. After I interviewed about 40 people around the world, they all had a common thread that they were all coaches. And I started to wonder, what is this about coaching? So I went into a positive psychology course in Vancouver and through Skype on New York for 6 months. And I just dove deep into the world of positive psychology. That's where I discovered mindset and was able to get back to running and get healthy and eating well again. And then that was when I became a life coach.
Love it. That's why I love hearing that. I think a lot of times you hear these stories with people in the coaching profession, right? So in fitness coaching, which I have over 20 years of experience in the fitness and health field, the common story, not everybody, but I'm going to say, and I'm going to make this up, but I'm going to say about 80% of the well-known fitness people, the people that have been in it as a career, were kids who as a child battled obesity, right? And they were finding a way out to better themselves, and they came into fitness and they started paying it forward to other people, and that's their passion, right? And I find this with life coaching to be very similar, right? It's a very similar trend as people are trying, hey, how can I up my mental game or my emotional state or whatever it may be? And along that journey, they start stacking it and they say, wait, now I can help other people. Wow, this is even better.
Yeah. And may I share something I learned about life coaching?
Please.
It goes with what you're saying, is that I grew up a very difficult childhood, and I went through a lot of counseling for many, many years after I left home. And it was really interesting when I first was coached, because in counseling, they always tell you what to do. You should do this or you should try that. And they tell you what's wrong, what you need to do better. And in coaching, they empower you to access what's in you that's already there, and they look at what's good. And I was just so taken by that. I wanted to spend the rest of my life living with those people and helping people that have been through years of counseling to experience that as well.
I love it. And it's no surprise to the people that are listening to this today. My personal coaching clients all make over $250,000 a year take home. And that's only, you coach what you're used to. And one time I had someone ask me, it was a business owner, and they said, Doug, I will never have a coach, someone younger than I am, tell me what to do. And I said, you shouldn't.
Oh.
The coach should ask you the right questions and mirror back to you, and therefore you figure out what you're supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what you're saying. And no matter what level people are playing at, they're all raising the bar for where they are today. And there's nobody should be telling you their dogma or what they have to do or what you should do. It really is all within inside of you. And those listening to this, it's all within inside of you too. And it's just a matter. A great coach helps you pull it out of yourself and recognize those things. And like you obviously do with your clients, Gina, you're kind of, I call it planting seeds. I plant seeds in a session that are supposed to come to fruition 3, 4, 5 weeks from that conversation, where all of a sudden the client, right, or yourself, right? My coaches do this to me. I think every coach needs to have a coach. My clients do this to me, where all of a sudden I'm coming back with, this was my idea. And my coach just looks at me and laughs, goes, sure. And I know you planted that, didn't you? That's awesome. And so now are you working with most of your clients remotely, or are they mostly in a local area, or how are you doing that with your business?
I really prefer to work with people in person.
Yeah.
But I do mostly work with people remotely because they're in the United States, because that's where my podcast listeners are. So we connect on Skype or just on the phone.
Yeah. Most of my friends who are also coaches in Canada and the UK or Australia, they're always saying that, well, let me ask you this. Do you find that the conversations that you're having in the United States right now at this moment tends to be more open to coaching than other places in the world?
That is a really good question. I've not thought of that before.
It's something that I hear a lot. The UK is kind of coming into it. What I always hear is, and this is going to offend a lot of people, I know, but I'm just going to be transparent of what I hear from people, because I do have some of my best friends are well-known coaches from all over the world. And the way that they would describe it is United States, Canada, UK, then Australia. When you look at English-speaking countries, and then it goes on from there. But the percentages drop dramatically as you move to different parts of the world when it comes to particularly this conversation, right? The conversation of bettering yourself.
I agree, because my listeners are primarily in Australia, then the US, Canada's near the end. But I actually have people message me from India and even Ethiopia. So it is starting to spread. It's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're truly international. You have an international business. I love it. That's exciting, Gina. Well, so what are some of the more common reasons that somebody reaches out to you? What's going on in their lives?
Well, a lot of people that reach out to me have gone through some trauma, because I do a lot of work on PTSD and anxiety, and I had to overcome that myself. So I can switch hats from a coaching hat to consulting or mentoring if they get really stuck. And I've gotten involved in a couple projects where they're doing coaching with homeless in the shelters and some single moms. And I really prefer doing that work. But in order to pay the bills, I also work with corporations. So a bit of everything.
Wow. Yeah, that's really robust. And thank you for reaching out and doing stuff with the homeless, such a big issue that's out there and doesn't seem to get enough attention. So I appreciate that you're doing that.
It's great work. They're doing some top secret studies I can't share yet,
Oh.
but I think it's going to change the way that we look at the world, because if these can prove that coaching is helpful, you might see a lot more of that expand into other areas of the world.
Oh, wow. Cool. I like top secret. I'm going to hit pause on the recording and see if I can pick your brain. So very cool. So someone comes to you and they've had trauma in your life. So, and I know, because I get the emails that come in like you, from people that are listening to this, they're sharing the traumas that they've gone through. And oftentimes they're going through right now. So let's take us through some steps. What are some common things that people who are experiencing trauma, but maybe not know what the next step is, that they should do? What would you recommend?
Well, the first thing I always have to say is that if someone has had trauma, then they always need to decide if having a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist is for them. That's always like the first thing is, and if you do or you don't. But once that's taken care of and you do have a counselor or you don't need one, then I think it's a matter of having someone safe that you can talk to, that can listen. And I mean, like, really listen and not judge. And then to start to focus on the positives. So a lot of people with PTSD, it replays what's happened over and over and over in their brain. But they can start to try to find some more positive things to think about in that place, or start to focus on things like meaning or passion, and just really find something that is meaningful to them that they can start to do to fill in some of that dark space that might be around them.
So when that's happening, are you suggesting that they rewrite the narrative of that experience?
Never thought of it in that words, but that would be a great idea.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Well, this is author of your own story. So it is definitely what I think of. But, oftentimes with anybody, when you're looking at any environment, like myself as well, when I journal in the morning, I'm thinking of things that I'm grateful for. And, I'm human. So there's days I wake up or I go write down my gratefuls and I'm like, I don't want to do this. But there's always something to be positive about or put a spin on. Like, I'm glad this happened because here's the lesson in this. And obviously it's easier for people at different stages. But the way I liken it, and let me know if you agree, Gina, it's kind of like, well, you're a runner. It's kind of like the gym, right? Or working out, running. right? The first time I go running, 3 blocks, I'm winded, my legs are sore, it hurts. Fast
Mhm.
forward, if I keep doing that, right, relatively time, let's say 4 times a week, and I keep doing that, 3 months later, it's nothing. It's easy. It feels like it's natural. Even when I don't want to go for a run, I can do it much more readily because I've got my reps in. It's just repeating the process. And the hardest part is that first run. Actually, the hardest part is the second one. Second one's the hardest, right? Because you're sore. But after that, it really gets easy. Do you find it's the same thing with these practices with people going through PTSD or heavy trauma?
I do. And I think that saying it's a stages thing was a really good point, because I'm working with people in the beginning a lot. So I have someone I'm working with whose wife just left him for another man with kids, and he's in shock. And there's no way he could see right now any good, but he can practice gratitude and he can start to look at what he can do. Whereas someone who, like me, 5 years ago, I had a heart attack. Now I'll tell you that was a really good thing. It changed my path 100%. So it very much depends where the person is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm trying to relate this to everybody listening and my own experiences, rather than just but I can think about, someone who I just got off the phone with a little bit before you and I jumped on was a client of mine who is in a fight in a relationship with their spouse. And at the moment, it's very heated, right? It seems horrible, but the more you can distance yourself from the experience, the easier it is to have a little more clarity and work a little bit more through it.
Yeah. And also, if you can realize that it's not you, if you can take away whatever the situation, sometimes we tell ourselves things like, I'm bad, or I really messed up, so now I'm not good. And if you can somehow get away from that, so much easier to get through it.
Yeah, so true. So absolutely true. So great. So if someone's going through this, they've had some PTSD. Now, do you work with people? We think PTSD, the first thing that comes to mind is military for me, and I know PTSD goes across the board. But do you work with people that are recent, ex-military?
I have never worked with anyone ex-military, but people from the military email me on my podcast or follow me on Instagram. So I'm guessing the work I'm doing is widespread. But most of the people I work with that have PTSD are sexual survivors. They've been raped or sexually abused.
Oh man, I always hate hearing that. It's a very tough one to even listen to. So thank you again for not just the homeless, but for doing the work you do, because it really is important. For those people that are out there also listening, and see if we can give them, if they've been sexually abused, because this is a common story that I hear in their past, and it's recently come up. And when I say come up, they've recently recognized that they were sexually abused. Is from a coaching perspective, what are a couple things that they can do to help them move forward to the next step? Obviously, getting professional help, but what are a couple things they could do right in the moment if they're sitting at their office and they're listening to you speak, and you could say, "Hey, look, these are a couple things that you could do right now."
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to share my own personal experience of what worked for me,
Sure.
or do you want me just to list a couple things off?
Completely up to you.
Yeah, sure. I was raped when I was 16 by somebody, sadly, I'd gone to kindergarten with, so I had known quite some time.
Wow.
And it was a date rape drug at a party. And a lot of times we just block it out and don't remember it because it's hard to remember. Not to mention, in my case, the date rape drug really messes with your memory, but it comes out in ways of not feeling safe around. For me, it was men. I had all women friends. I would make sure that I was never alone. I was very scared and living in fear a lot.
Wow.
So when I had this heart attack, I started having memories come back, and they told me that was PTSD like symptoms. And I tried a lot of things, and it was actually EMDR therapy. I did about 8 sessions.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. It's a type of therapy where they use hand movements in front of your eyes, and you talk about your trauma and it releases it from your brain. But I was so scared of my therapist that I sat by the door with the door open, and he gave me these little clickers I'd hold in my hand. And he just alternates the clickers. It buzzes in your left hand and then your right hand. I don't really know all of how that works, but I know after 7 years of going to counseling to try and get through all the childhood things I'd gone through, in about 8 sessions, it was gone. I slept every night after that. I had no more flashbacks. And I learned the story that I told myself because of this when it happened, when I was just 16 years old, was that, I was not worthy of love. And I did a lot of things that I really regretted all through high school. And each time that I would put myself in a poor choice situation, shall we say, with a gentleman, I would feel worse about myself. So in positive psychology, I can't think of the name right now, but it's a cycle that you think something of yourself, you act in a way that makes it true, and then it repeats the cycle. So that allowed me to break that cycle, make some very big changes in how I live my life and how I see myself even.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I had no idea. Wow. And just hearing that, when you identify this pattern, right, the way of being that you were doing that was putting yourself in this negative cycle, you recognize it. Then did you just go about saying, look, this isn't helping me, I'm going to now change it and write a different pattern and act and behave in a new way? Or was it more of a process? How'd you go through that?
Boy, that's such a powerful question, Doug. I don't really know. I would say it is definitely a process, because a lot of those behaviors are kind of default behaviors. So I might do something and then I tell myself that's not who I am. So it was figuring out who I was. And I think a lot of the reason for my heart attack, the heart condition I have, is always there, but it gets way worse if I have a lot of stress versus not. So I believe that I turned off that gut feeling that tells you if something's right or wrong when I was just a little kid. So my entire life, every decision that I made was not a good choice, or it wasn't based on my values or what I needed. So it was that realization that everything I've built today, I'm super grateful for the kids that I have and the good things that I've brought with me, but everything I had was not built on me. So the beauty of it was now I can build the life, I can build my own story of the life that I was meant to have. And everything I started doing became intentional. Instead of reacting, I was choosing.
I love that so much, Gina. Oh my goodness. Absolutely amazing. So, you're on this journey now. Take me through, are there conscious practices that you do now to ensure that you're making the right choices, or the choices that benefit you in your journey? Or is this something that you just live into now?
Yeah, no, I still, every day it's intentional. And I've read hundreds of personal growth books and listened to podcasts, and I have my own coach. And every time I coach, I learn something. But my favorite book is Think and Grow Rich. And there's a whole bunch of personal development questions in the back of that book. And I believe that, as he says, you have to constantly audit your life all the time and figure out, is the choices that I'm making today, last week, and last month going to get me to where I want to go?
I love it. I read that book every quarter. It's my daily statement. People can see, you can't see, but I'm holding it up. It is the only book I read on a regular basis. I digest like a book a week. So I'm a book aficionado when it comes to this level. And great for you. It's one of the seminal books that's out there. And I like it. If you just look in the title, it's Think and Grow Rich. It's not sit on your butt and grow rich. It's not dream and grow rich. It's really think. And you obviously have taken time to think, answer the questions, and make an intentional, to write your own story, so to speak, and make intentional progress to the life that you truly live into.
And, I just want to mention to anyone listening, it sounds easy, but it's not easy, because when you sit down and really think about a decision, for me in the past, I always felt like, oh, I just have to do this, and I'd do it. And if it didn't turn out well, then I'd blame whatever circumstance caused me to have had to do it, if that makes sense. But now it's like, I choose to do that. I chose to start this business, even though it may impact A, B, or C. So If it goes good, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't go good, now I actually have the power to make a decision to move me forward.
No doubt. Absolutely. Well, Gina, we're running out of time here. I want to thank you so much for being here. Your story is inspiring, both the stories you shared, by the way. So thank you for being so vulnerable and open to share your gifts to the world. For people that want to know more about you and your business, where's the best place for them to find out more information?
Thanks for asking. I have a podcast that is absolutely free, just like yours, Synergy Mindset Coaching. There's about 50 people that have shared their stories of everything from a gentleman who was thrown off a horse at a business retreat, someone who broke their back, all kinds of amazing stories of people that have just overcome. And I interview people on mindset coaching as well. So if you're looking to make that jump to start a business, I say do it. And also listen to your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my episode, you did a great job. It was funny. We found out there's another Doug Holt that may have a better, exciting life. I got to find him. So if he's out there, please reach out to me. But Gina, thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Everybody go over, listen to Gina's podcast. It is amazing. She's an amazing host, and she's obviously doing great in the world. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
At Author of Your Own Story, we believe in taking a holistic approach to your health, where you aren't just physically healthy, but your entire mind, body, and soul is operating at its most optimal level. To get started in creating holistic health, download our free holistic health checklist at authorofyourownstory.com/body-gift. And don't forget to be the author of your own story.